All right, so we're looking at basic operations of numbers. And so just a quick note, this is going to be very fundamental. So refrain from using a calculator. It's going to help you immensely as you go further in this course and beyond. So make sure that you refrain from using that. So first thing we're going to look at is the concept of absolute value of a real number n, denoted, we use these little hash symbols on each side, okay? It is the distance from 0 to n on a number line. Distance is always going to be measured as a positive number. So even if you're looking at 4 or -4, the absolute value, it's going to be 4 units because you're 4 units away from 0. Okay? So right here it says rewrite each expression without the absolute value bars. So the absolute value of 7, well, it's just going to be 7. That's 7 units away from 0. Same thing with -7. That's 7 units away from 0. We always measure it as being positive. Distance is always positive. Part C says absolute value of 0. Well, 0 is 0 away from 0. So that would just be a 0 right there. All right, moving on. Now we're going to look at adding real numbers with same signs. Okay, so if you add real numbers with the same sign, basically what you want to do is add the two numbers together and then keep the sign. If they're both positive in this first case, so 9 plus 12, that's 21, and there you go, that's your answer. Now if you have -22 plus -15, basically what you want to do for a second is just forget about the negatives and just add those two numbers together, and that gives us 37. But then they were both negative, so you want to add that up as -37. And then I also have a picture here. This one's a little bit easier. The numbers are smaller. -2 plus -4. So see, you're starting at 0 and you walk back 2 steps, plus walk back another 4 steps. So altogether you walked back 6 steps. So -6 right there. Okay. What if they are not the same sign? Well, basically, the way I like to think about this is they're competing against each other. Okay, the numbers are competing against each other. And you can read this if you want. I'm basically going to summarize it. What you want to do here is take the absolute value of both numbers. So kind of forget, I have the -6 right here. So 17 plus -6. Basically, what we want to do is subtract the smaller from the larger number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 17 and I'm going to subtract 6 from it, and that will give me 11. So then, like I said, it's kind of like a battle. So the one with the larger number, we keep that sign. So since 17 is larger than 6, we're going to go ahead and keep this as a positive 11. So that's our answer right here. Now looking on part B, we have a -24 plus 16. And the most common mistake students will say, they'll add it together and they'll say -40, but that's not correct. Okay, so one's negative and one's positive. They're pulling you in separate directions. So what you want to do again, once again, take the larger number, which would be 24, and then subtract the smaller number, 16. And let's see, I'll have to borrow here. And so let's see, I'll wind up with 8, right? And so the answer is going to be -8 because in this case, the negative number is larger, so it's tugging me more towards the negative. And once again, I have a little visual up here. Once again, the numbers are a little bit smaller. So -2 plus 5. So I'm tugging you to the left 2 steps, but then the plus 5 is going to tug you in the positive direction. So you come back and you wind up at 3. And so that's the same thing as if you were to take the difference and then keep the sign of the larger number, which was 5. So it would be positive 3 right there on that example. Okay, now let's look at subtracting. Okay, so real quick, let me get down a little bit further. There we go. Okay, so right here it says for any real number a and b, if you have a minus b, that's the same thing as a plus -b. Okay, and so once again, the common misconception students will make on this first example is they think the answer is -6. because they're like, oh, negative 12 take away 6, that's okay. 12 take away 6 is 6, so negative 6. But that's incorrect. So what we want to do here is we'll go ahead and follow this pattern right here. We'll go ahead and put this as negative 12 plus negative 6. And then we use one of the rules from up above. You're adding two numbers with the same sign. So you add them together and keep the sign. So that would go ahead and be negative 18. So part A is negative 18. On part B, we're subtracting a negative, and so we have a double negative property. So if you're subtracting a negative, you can actually go ahead and change that to a plus. So that's what we're going to do right here. So this will become 14 plus 4. 14 plus 4 is 18. There we go. Positive 18. And then on part C, once again, we have that double negative. So this will be negative 8 plus 6. And then what we want to do is take the larger number, subtract the smaller number, which is 2. But then it's going to be a negative 2 because the larger number was negative. So they won the tug of war, whatever, however you want to think about that. All right, moving right along. Now we're going to look at multiplying. We're going to look at the rules for multiplying. So if you multiply two positives or two negatives, the result is positive. So you can see 3 times 5 is 15, and so is negative 3 times negative 5. If the signs are different, then the result will be negative. So you can see whether the 5 were to be negative or the 3, the result comes back as a negative. Okay, so let's go ahead and try a couple of these. So negative 8 times 5. So just kind of, for right now, just focus on the 8 and 5. 8 times 5 is 40. Let's see, one was negative, one was positive. So if they're different signs, the result is negative. So it's going to be negative 40. Then here, they're both negative. So let's see, 4 times 20 is 80. And then a negative times a negative actually results in a positive. We can see that from the rule right here. So our answer is 80 right there. Then on C, we have 0 times negative 12. Well, 0 times any number is going to equal 0. So 0 times any number will be 0. So 0 times negative 12, that's 0. There we go. And not negative 0. We don't do negative 0. 0 is neutral, so it's not positive or negative. It's a neutral number. Okay, dividing is actually going to work the same way as the multiplication rules. So if they're both negative, the result is positive. If one's negative, doesn't matter if it's the numerator or the denominator, the result will be negative. Okay, so it says simplify each fraction, and so these should all divide evenly. So 6 divides into 18 3 times, and it's going to be a negative 3 because one was positive, one was negative. See, negative 4 into 28. So just focus on 4 into 28 for a minute. And I believe that's going to be a 7, but it will result in a negative 7 since the 4 was negative. And then on part C, they're double negatives. So really, if you want to, what you can do is you can actually cancel them out. Whenever you have two negatives, and you can do this with the multiplication too, you can just, the negatives get canceled out. That is equivalent right here. I can just drop the negative signs. And then let's see, 2 goes into 24. 1, 2, so 12 altogether. So our answer is 12 on C. Then I threw a couple trick questions in here. Not really trick questions, but looking at when zero's involved. So 0 divided by 5. A lot of times students are a little confused by that. But let's look at the pattern of dividing numbers. So what I want you to notice is the denominator times your answer always equals the numerator. So 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. Negative 4 times negative 7, negative times a negative, is positive 28. 2 times negative 2 times 12 would give you that negative 24 at the top right here. So think about this. What would you have to multiply 5 by to get 0. So 5 times what would give you 0? Remember before, 0 times any value will give you 0. So 5 times 0 will give you 0. So that's the answer right there. 0 divided by 5 is 0. And so I'm just kind of following the pattern we established up above. So the next one, now we flip it. So now you have 5 divided by 0. So 0 times what would give you 5? 0. So we're trying to figure out 0 times what number equals 5. Well, remember back up here, we established that 0 times any number is 0, so that seems impossible, right? Well, a lot of times in math, we don't like to say things are impossible, so a lot of times we'll use undefined, and so that's what we're going to do here. This is going to be undefined. So we don't want to quite rule it out just yet, so we're going to put it as undefined. And this will conclude part 1 of our lesson.